we have a busy meeting this evening, and I hope if you're watching on YouTube, you will find it interesting and informative. So, on to item 1, which is apologies for absence, please. Lizzie.
I've had no apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest from anyone? I see nobody's hand up there. Thank you. Now, the minutes of the last meeting. It was the meeting held on the, let me get my papers in the right order.
The 18th of February, Chair.
Sorry, I've got lots of bits of paper. 18th of February. I hope everyone's had a chance to have a look through those.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed?
Yeah. Agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, on to item 4, which is the agenda for tonight. And the first item is the memorial to victims of the pandemic. And I'd like to ask Councillor Markham, Brian Markham, to tell us a little bit about this. He's put this forward for the committee to consider as whether the Town Council would be providing a suitable memorial to local victims of the coronavirus pandemic. So, Brian, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your ideas.
Right, thank you, Chair. You and I spoke about this, I think, several weeks ago anyway, about possibility. Now, hello. The neighbour's cat's just decided to interrupt the meeting. When it's down on the agenda as a memorial, I think there were two things, and I think we just the next item is considering other ways to, if you like, celebrate the end of COVID, perhaps. But as I think previous meeting, Councillor Hallam, whether it's a town council meeting or a council meeting, he did say just how traumatic, perhaps, and certainly life-changing this whole last year has been. I mean, it's had an effect on everybody, from young children and their education, and adults, and of course some of us have lost loved ones. And at the same time, there's been people working so hard on behalf of us all, of the community, in the hospital, all those wonderful groups that have been providing food and support to people, whether it's a local pub acting as a food bank, the Sikh community, for instance, of fabulous work. There's so many, I can't mention them all. Now, I think we need two things, really, and how we do it, I don't have all the suggestions and all the answers. One is to remember how the community came together, and to thank all those who supported us during that time, but also to remember those who've lost loved ones during that period. Many people, they had loved ones die. They couldn't see them in hospital. They couldn't really have a family event, funeral. They couldn't, and it's a major event in many people's lives, what's happened there. Now, I've thought of 2 or 3 things that could happen, and it will be very much down to the new town council. And if I may ask her, if she's here tonight, the future mayor perhaps to take a lead on this. Why I brought it up now, and rather than leave it to the town council, is that I think we need to launch a campaign and ask people how they would like to commemorate, how they would like to remember. I don't have a suggestion. I've an idea that perhaps they could, in St. Giles Churchyard near to the hospital, they could be a tree which will be there in several hundred years' time, and a bench perhaps where members of the staff from the hospital could go if they've been. But I also thought perhaps we have a memorial service for loved ones, but at the same time an event at the Guildhall where we might have pictures of the year, people coming together, pictures of lockdown, pictures of volunteers, pictures. There are lots of suggestions, but I think what the town council should do is, and it's a great opportunity to promote the work of the town, and something actually the town is really in the interest of the town. The town council will represent the community. Is we go out there and ask people for their experiences, ask for their ideas, ask for crowdfunding or whatever else we can weigh if people, and ask for maybe if it's going to be a permanent memorial, we ask for ideas of what sort of memorial it would be. So that at this stage, it is putting that out there, asking people, asking the community, and doing it through the auspices of the new town council to promote those ideas, and under the leadership of the mayor and some community groups, they come back eventually with a report. How we're going to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That's the idea.
Thank you, brilliant. I can see that Councillor Hallam has joined the meeting, and I think you probably missed the my request at the beginning that people spoke at the beginning of each item if they wish to speak, if they weren't on the exec, just to try to cut down some of the longer discussions we might have if people keep coming back in. So I'm going to ask Councillor Hallam to come in now, and then the exec will discuss the proposal that Councillor Markham's put forward.
Yeah, so I think, as I understand it, Councillor Markham's put forward a discussion point around memorials following COVID and the impact that it's had on our community.
Yeah,
that's right. Yes, yes. Item 4.
Yeah, I think it's a really good. I haven't seen an agenda, by the way, for this meeting, so I'm going a little bit blind. So if Lizzie could ping one over to me on email, that would be helpful. I really agree with Councillor Markham on this. I think it's really important. I think I was one of the people that suggested at the borough that we give the hospital the freedom of the borough. I think that's a suitably suitable recognition for what's happened, but there is one of the discussion points that we had around that was that there's a lot of people that are involved in this, and to restrain it to just a hospital, does that forget the people that are working on the waste contract? Does that forget the volunteers? Does that eliminate those people? So I think the type of event that we need to be thinking about is quite broad. It is quite modern, and I like the idea of when it's appropriate and restrictions allow. I like the idea of asking people what they think, and maybe actually that can be done online anyway. So there's no difficulty with asking people face to face. Maybe it's something that could be started online and carried on face to face when the restrictions allow. So yeah, all in favour of that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lane, Jamie, you had your hand up. So
yeah, thank you again. This is a great idea. I'd like to see some sort of living monument to commemorate those that passed away. Something like a circle of cherry trees, something like that blossoms every year. A bit like the daffodils we have from Marie Curie. But since there is a reminder that blossoms every year be a great idea. And also I like the idea of the church service as well. So in support of this, and I'll wait to see where it progresses.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think they're both, really good ideas, something that is long lasting and also something that is more of a sort of, a commemorative service that people can take part in. And I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it ought to be available to everyone in the town, because people have been affected in many, many different ways, some more directly than others. But this has touched all our lives, and I think we have to take time to offer that sort of remembrance and that comfort, if you like, that people can go somewhere. I think it needs to be a physical space. I would love to see a group of trees maybe in one of the parks that people can go and sit amongst, Some benches has been mentioned. Somewhere peaceful, somewhere quiet, somewhere contemplative. But I think, open it up. Maybe on email, on the website. Maybe that's something that could start now and be taken forward as an item, an agenda item for the new council after May. It would fit very well with the Community Services Committee. It could cross over into the Environmental Committee. It depends what sort of memorial people are putting forward. So do we have an agreement on that it goes forward onto the agenda for the Community Services Committee, and we could start maybe putting something out on the website quite soon? Yes?
Yes, agreed. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry, could I just ask a question? Wouldn't it something need to go to the meeting on the 29th? I think it would be fantastic. I'm sure we get the support, at least to show that the whole town council. I'll ask Richard's view on that. I thought
Chair, the report of this meeting, including your decision just now to publicise and to place it on the agenda for the coming Community Services Committee, the report of that will be presented to the full council. So every opportunity for Councillor Markham to refer to it again, or indeed any other councillors.
I won't necessarily just think of the process, that's it.
Yes. Everything we discuss on this committee goes forward to the full council for their ultimate agreement. Okay, so we'll hear again, and you will have a chance to speak to it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, on to item number 5, which is similar in a sense, community events, perhaps looking at a different element of the end of the pandemic. Coming out of isolation, people getting together again, people starting to take part in their community in a more engaging way, and perhaps involving some of the sports, arts, cultural partners that we have in the town. A number of towns are planning events such as this. We don't have a date that it could take place yet, but there are plans afoot in other parts of the country to have a coming together of the local communities. This is something that could happen ward by ward, or it could be a town event. And I just wanted to put it out to you that is this something again that we could refer to the Community Services Committee after May. So, Catherine, Mike, have you got your hand up again on this, or did it not go down from before?
No, I do have my hand up again on this.
Right, if you'd like to speak first, then the committee can come in.
Very, very quick. I just wonder what Carnival is doing on this. Carnival was always, obviously, when it was first founded, traditionally associated with the hospital and fundraising and that type of stuff. So I think it'd be interesting to see what Marcia and her team have planned, if there's anything planned this year, or if it's going to be 2022. I think that's an interesting avenue to explore.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, because it would probably be about the time when people were allowed to be out and about a little bit more. Right, Jamie again, and then Mike, and then, sorry, Brian.
Yeah, thank you. You said at item 4 about a memorial. I think at item 5 needs to go to the same committee, because we've got to be very careful and understand that people have lost loved ones during the pandemic, yes, and we don't want to celebrate something that actually isn't really a celebration to some people. So I think I'll be very careful what we do. And I think something more somber, like a church service, would be far more appropriate, personally.
Right. Okay. Brian?
I think the two are linked. It depends what comes up with the a festival, if that's what it's called. But I agree with Jamie to a certain extent that the two we definitely need not just to remember those loved ones and commemorate that. We've got to, I think, commemorate, as said before, all those groups involved, all the hospitals, all the care workers in the care homes, and all the various charities. And I think if that's a sort of community event, and bringing those together and thanking them, then yes, if it's it wouldn't be the same thing to be having a band on the market square and a party, but I'm sure that's not what's suggested at all. So support it.
No. I think one of the things that's come through from Frome Council was to celebrate some of the volunteering and the community spirit that has grown during the pandemic. So it's just acknowledging the fact that people have come together and gone over and above to help neighbours, and maybe just let people, meet face to face in a sort of an appropriate way, in an appropriate venue, time, whatever. I think the separation of the two types of events is very, very important. I take your point. Councillor Marriott, Les.
I didn't know if you wanted to make a contribution. At the end of the day, you have to read what's on the agenda. It does say initiate discussion, because we're not the only body in the town that obviously have got ideas. There are with the community events. So I think for us to sort of float ideas around this evening is probably a bit premature. It is about us actually going out to the community, the groups out there, and seeing what they want as much as what we want. And I think that's where we ought to be taking it, to be quite honest.
Right. Okay. Can we agree that this goes on to the future agenda for the Environmental Services Committee? It might be the... Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yes, Environmental Services or the Community Services, whichever is most appropriate.
Agree.
Agreed. Right. Thank you very much. Right. Item number 6, the community needs analysis. We have on page 32, there is an example of a suggested way of going about this. It's quite, it's one of those things that there's many ways of doing it, but we have got a model there that you might like to have a look at some point, if we haven't already done so, and think about where and how this community needs analysis will be taking place. It's something that we decided would be necessary at the beginning of the new town council, and we will have to decide tonight how we go forward with this. So can I have any thoughts on this, please? Councillor Murray, did your hand up from before, or do you want to come in with this?
No, my hand's up from before, but just to make a comment, because I know that Richard's written these reports. I just wonder what Richard's views on this are, rather than yours, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this is just a suggestion of a particular way forward. It was one of the candidates for during the selection process presented this, which the panel felt was particularly helpful. The purpose really of the item is to put it on the agenda for the first meeting of the Community Services Committee, and whilst it's always been stated as being your intent to do this, there is currently no formal resolution that you wish to do so. So start the formal process and to place it on the record, please.
There's an example on page 32 of your agenda, if you sort of quickly refer to that.
Well, I think the committee will probably just refer it to the committee, the new committee chair.
Right. Are you in agreement that we pass this on to the new committee?
Yeah, agreed.
Agree.
Right, thank you. Thank you. Right, we agreed at a previous meeting the bank mandate. Do you want to just talk us through this, Richard? Because
thank you,
we
Chair.
have been dealing with this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you say, you've already agreed to open a bank account, which has now been effected. This is just to set out the arrangements that will happen after the new process and the new account subcommittee comes into force to comply fully with your financial regulations, but also to cover the intervening period before the account subcommittee is in place. And for that interim period, the suggestion is that either I or the administration officer approve the I beg your pardon, upload the information and the payments are authorised by yourself and the vice chair, the deputy chair, sorry, for this committee for this intervening period. I am intending that we will have a full payments run of accounts for approval to your next meeting on the 12th of April. This recommendation covers any other urgent payments that may need to be made outside of that particular committee meeting.
Right. So can we have your agreement on the mandate? Right.
Agreed.
Anybody? Thank you. Thank you. Right, on to item 8, the mayoral allowance. Again, this was debated and agreed at the last meeting, and we just want to I mean, maybe Richard, could you go through this as well,
thank
please?
you.
Because
yes, as you said, you've already reached a policy decision on this, and that half of the mayoral allowance be paid directly to the relevant town mayor at the time. The incoming town mayor, Councillor Ashraf, on her personal reasons, would prefer that the payment be dealt with through the office. So that's the proposal, just covering the term of office of Councillor Ashraf. That would leave the matter open for the next incoming mayor after who succeeds her.
Right, thank you. Can we agree on that, item 8? Thank you. Now, item 9. Richard, I'll hand over to you on this one.
Well, thank you, Chair. This is not a formal Treasury management policy. It's noting that you will need, the new Policy and Finance Committee will need to consider carefully its Treasury management policy. However, you will be receiving from the precept a large sum of money at the end of April, not all of which is going to be expended immediately. So we will be holding some significant sums of money. This is no comment on our existing clearing bank that we're using, but just a good practice, it appeared to me, to seek the advice of your financial advisor, Mr. Wilbur, as to the best way of proceeding. And you will see from the report that he has suggested that there's little to be gained from any particular bank in terms of interest rates currently, but it would be prudent for you in terms of where you keep your reserves to have any funds that are unlikely to be utilised in the immediate term to be placed in each of the 3 main clearing banks mentioned in the report. So authority is taken for this, please. Because of the potentially significant sums involved, I would suggest the committee would wish that this goes beyond the scope of your delegated powers, and this will be a formal recommendation for the next council meeting, please.
Right. Are there any comments on this? No. Right. Well, can we recommend this goes to the full council for agreement? I think, as Richard has said, it's beyond our delegated powers. Right. Thank you. I can't see anybody objecting to that. Thank you very much. Item number 10, the appointment of internal auditors.
Again, Sorry,
Richard.
I was only going to say we have external auditors, and just to explain, there are 2 separate things. There's a legal requirement, as well as having an external auditor who will look at the probity of the council's actions. An internal auditor will look at the systems you use in more detail and to ensure that matters followed successfully. It's a legal requirement. NCALC provide this service, and the recommendation is we use that service. You can see the cost and the lady who is proposed to be our internal auditor. That will be both for the current financial year, albeit there'll only be 1 transaction for her to look at, but she will sign off your end of year return to the government, and then to do the full internal audit procedures covering the matters I've set out in the report for the coming financial year.
Right. Are there any comments, questions? No? Can we agree that this appointment is made?
Agree.
Yes,
Agree.
thank you, thank you. Right, number 11. The latest update on asset and service transfer. Now, thank you very much, Laurie Gould, for coming in this evening. And if you'd like to perhaps update us on anything that is new that you can enlighten us on.
You're muted, Laurie.
That's
Sorry,
it.
I keep making that mistake. Yes, I think we are making good progress. I think West Northamptonshire Council are now well aware of the Guildhall and what is there and the room arrangements, etc. And I was talking to Edwina Crowley this morning, and she's now quite keen to get a move on and get the negotiations going, and then come back to you before the 31st of March, hopefully, with a set of proposals which you can agree or disagree with, but hopefully agree with. And I think the message has got across as to what the town council wants to do in the future vis-a-vis the community and so on. So I think you now have a sympathetic ear. That is certainly my clear impression. And hopefully we'll go ahead and have to progress this. As I say, time is not on our side at the moment, and there may be some slippage over into the 31st, beyond the 31st of March. But I'm hopeful we'll get an agreement which will allow the town council occupation of the necessary rooms, and certainly initially to sort out the office accommodation, which I've been doing today, to make sure the staff that you've already appointed have desks and so on. I know Richard was having an issue with broadband and so on, but hopefully we'll have that sorted out by the middle of the week as well. And then, of course, the issue of all the rest of the rooms. And my personal feeling is that the use of the council chamber, other rooms, I don't think it's going to be a problem in the future. Something will be worked out. And I'm not just saying that in order to sound hopeful and positive. That is clearly my belief.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Brian Markham, you have your hand up here.
Excuse me, Chair. With greatest respect to Laurie Gould, he started off there pretty much saying, I think there's goodwill and we've been moving, which was what we heard last month at the Executive Committee. I believe things moved forward more in the last week, and that you yourself, as part of the review that was body, and Cabs and Marriott have been involved in. I'd just be interested to hear from those people who attended the site visit what their feeling is, if we're really making progress. Because the last month we were told that things were moving. Now we're right down on the wire, and what are we making progress on? I hear more that instead of months ago being told, well, we would maybe have control of income, say, from the Great Hall, from weddings, events and everything else. This is not on the agenda. But of course, that's going to affect the viability of the town council for years to come. I know I get the feeling, and I'm not as involved as you are, Chair, that it's a matter of there may be goodwill, but still things are being done to us rather than us having the ability to dictate terms.
Well, if I could just say to begin with, I think there's been a huge breakdown in communication. I think we were working on one premise, and I think the West Northampton Unitary were perhaps not fully briefed on our ambition and our intention. Laurie Gould was at the meeting on Friday and heard everything that was said. I think maybe, Laurie, would you like to just reassure us all that it is making progress, it is on everybody's agenda now, and that the West Northants authority do understand much better our point of view and our requests.
Yes, I can sympathise with Councillor Markham because we do have been sort of singing all for the same hymn sheet and saying the same things, and things have not been developing as they should do. But there's certainly the very clear impression I got from the people who were there, who were very much in the fold of the decision makers, was they understood an awful lot more than they did previously, having been able to appreciate what the Guildhall is and what, of course, the Town Council, this is the most important bit, needs in the future. I'm sorry if I sounded rather vague. It is my habit to be positive, but I really do believe that we are on a positive road here. But my only concern is just to get this moving and going again and make sure we do reach a point where the Town Council has secure occupation of the Guildhall and can move forward as in cooperation with the unitary authority. And certainly my very clear impression from the senior people we met was that this would happen.
Thank you. Thank you. Jamie Lane, Councillor Lane, do you want to come in here?
Well, thank you for the update. I still have concerns that we'll be there in time to be very clear what rooms we can use. I'm also concerned about the assets in the Guildhall, and I worry that on the 1st of April, West Northampton are going to move in and start removing objects and saying they're theirs and move them to a different venue. I've got concerns. I keep saying about the trust and how these articles are protected. I would like to see something in writing to satisfy my mind that I can sleep at night knowing that the assets and the Guildhall remain in Northampton Town. Thank you.
Can I Chair, answer those questions?
Please come back on that, Laurie, because I know you've thought about it very, very deeply.
Well, Jamie, you did impress upon me this at the last meeting of the Executive Committee, and it made quite an impression upon me. So I am taking to full council, the special council on the 22nd of March, authority to the Chief Executive to enter into an agreement with Northampton Town Council prior to the 31st of March for the safeguarding and security of all the muniments, which at that same council, you will be approving the final list, which will also be going to that council. So we've certainly taken that on board and it will be happening.
Made my night. I can't wait till next Monday. Thank you.
I thought I'd get something out of tonight's meeting. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Right. Councillor Marriott, Les.
Thank you, Laura.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the important thing for this is to make sure, I know this is a public meeting, but to make sure that we talked about the rudiments there and from Laurie and Jamie, but the Guildhall itself, the building is an important aspect of the town. It's an historic part of the town, and I think the public of Northampton would expect it to be kept primarily for the use of people in Northampton. So I do take what Councillor Markham says on board, and I think that's why we went into the meeting on Friday with, to make sure they understood how important that venue was for us all. If you've ever been the Mayor of Northampton, you'd realise that is a centre, and people enjoy going around the Guildhall to look at it. There's no political differences, luckily, on Northampton Borough Council for this. All political parties as one, and I think that's united front is something that we've shown now to the West Northampton, the political leadership as well as the officers, and just hopeful that that pays fruit, because obviously, if not now, in the future, we will be there to carry this forward to make sure we do get that use of what we require. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Stevens, Councillor Hibbert.
Yeah, to be fair to Laurie and Richard, I think from the very first meeting, it's always been understood that because of time constraints, we'd probably end up with licensed permission to use the Guildhall rather than a transfer of the asset, and that would probably take place during the first year of the elected council. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Yes, I think time is been the very difficult element in all this, and everybody has, I think the transfer of everything to the new unitary has been taking up officers and councillors' time in a far greater extent than everyone imagined. And this has not been at the top of everybody else's list. It's the top of our list, but unfortunately, it's one of many of the issues that they are having to deal with. But we will get there, and I think Laurie's right. There's definitely movement in the right direction, and people are listening. So I feel much more optimistic that people understand our point of view, and we move forward with this with hope in our hearts, really.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Before may I also make a brief update on the issue of transfer of services? In parallel with the discussions about the Guildhall, negotiations or discussions proceeded both at officer and elected member level with West Northants over which services may be transferred to the Town Council. And this also is a positive note that provisional agreement has been reached between the parties for a number of the services that you have indicated you would wish to be transferred to you. The proposal is on a funded basis, and I understand that a formal proposal is to be presented to the full West Northants Council very imminently, and will be hopefully able to report in much more detail at the full council meeting at the end of this month.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, that was the next point. Right, Les.
Yeah, just quickly on that one, Richard. Thanks for raising that, and I think that is something we were a bit fearful of. Obviously, from day one, it's actually making sure we get these services up and running, and we based it. And I know that the first political interaction we had with the leader of the West Northants, along with the leader of the Borough Council as well at the meeting, seemed to be negative. And I think there's the same when the officers met to do similar. But thanks to some of the work that's been done behind the scenes with Councillor Birch and also Councillor Nunn working together, I think that's brought fruition. So I'd really like to thank those two individuals for the work they've carried out. It'll become more clear, as Richard said at the meeting, of exactly how far we've got with it.
Thank you. Again, I think it's lack of communication. People are just not talking to each other and explaining situations in the way that progresses the whole matter. Councillor Mark and Brian.
Thank you. I just wanted to make clear in my head that I heard Richard say on a funded basis.
Yes.
and even if there's some timing on that funding as well, that when it comes to on a funded basis, that's very good news. Yeah.
Yes, it has to go to. Yeah, it has to go to the full council of West Northants, obviously. So
they daren't turn it down, daren't refuse it, dare they? With an election coming up.
Indeed. Thank you. Right. So can we note that Laurie will be updating us at with a further report at the end of the month, the 29th of March, where we might have a little bit more clarity on the situation.
Yes, and hopefully Edwina Crowley can also come along to that meeting.
Yes,
as well.
yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On to item 11, which is the calendar of meetings. Page 35, Appendix C. There is a list of dates, and these are not definitive dates. They are based on the week commencing. Obviously, we'll have to fit in around the West Northants meetings and any other meetings that are planned. But this just gives an indication of the frequency of meetings and is a guide to the future dates. But they obviously will be confirmed when the West Northants meetings calendar has been produced. Okay. So can we quickly agree on that?
Sorry, Jane. Quick question.
Oh, sorry.
The time of the meeting's going to be the evening. The evening meetings.
All 6 o'clock.
Yes. At the moment, they're all 6 o'clock meetings. Yes.
Chair, you took an earlier decision that all meetings unless otherwise agreed, will be by default at 6 p.m.
Right. Catherine, you had a comment?
Yes, I do. Has it been decided, or is it necessary to be decided formally, how the new elected councillors will be chosen to go on particular committees?
Yes, Chair. You have agreed to hold an informal meeting. The formal answer is it will be decided at the annual council meeting on the 17th of May. But in advance of that, on Monday, the 11th of May, all the new councillors are being invited to an informal meeting to divvy up, if you like, the committee places on the basis that you've also agreed that each new councillor will serve on 2 committees. Who sits on which committee to meet members' choices, that will be a matter to be debated amongst all the members on the 11th, and also to decide who will be nominated to be the chair and deputy chair of each of those committees. Also necessary because that affects the membership of the policy committee, which includes the chair and vice chair of the other committees. So there'll be a process to go through, and the intention is at 6 o'clock on Monday the 11th of May, there will be an informal meeting of all the new councillors for that purpose.
And will you be there, Richard, to help the process, or who will be running that process?
Richard.
I will be.
Richard will still be with us. Danny, you've got your hand up. You've got a comment.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just to confirm that date. Monday is the 10th of May. Is it Monday the 10th or Tuesday the 11th?
It's the date on the agenda, sorry. Did I say the wrong date? It's Tuesday the 11th. I'm sorry, if you turn over the page, you'll see the date.
They could still be deciding the results of the election on the 10th if things.
Yes.
So you know, maybe not the town council, but the police commissioner and everything else. So yeah, it must be Tuesday.
I think it's going to be a very quick turnover at that weekend, isn't it? Getting information out to
just if I may, Chair, for members, and I know other members of the council may be listening into this. Because this is a very short timescale, as you said, the town council votes may be counted on the Saturday, or it may be later, which is why we're meeting on the Tuesday evening. The important point is that I am going to write to every agreed candidate once the notice of election has been published, to alert all the candidates of the date of this meeting and what will be discussed, so that they could start thinking about it should they be successful. Because I don't have email contact, or won't have email contact with newly elected councillors, there would be a danger that someone might slip through the net and not be contacted. I'm sure political parties may want to ensure that their members are aware of it, but we could, of course, have persons elected who are not affiliated to a political party. So I intend writing to all the candidates, alerting them to what will happen after their election should they be successful.
Right, thank you. Well, that's the calendar of meetings. We've strayed slightly into the next item as well, but are we all agreed that the dates that we have there in front of us are provisional dates, but they do give an indication of the range of meetings?
Agreed.
Yes, thank you, thank you. On to item 13 then, the arrangements of the coming meetings, the ones that we've just been referring to, where the committees are being discussed. Richard, would you want to just talk us through these, because these are
yes, thank you, Jane.
meetings,
when you first decided, yes, indeed, when you first decided on these 3 meetings, I've just referred to the informal meeting of the council, but more importantly, the 2 other meetings you were proposing to have the annual council meeting would be a major community event, of which you were intending to invite representatives as a wider selection of the community as possible, to introduce the town council to them, both at the mayor making ceremony, and then at the electors meeting, which is the following week. This is a new concept for members who served only on the borough council. all town and parish councils statutorily have to call, the town mayor would call a town electors meeting every year. And you again were intending to have this as a widespread celebration of the community initially. Social distancing rules clearly prevent that. A virtual meeting would mean that such a meeting could not be as constructed as was intended. And I wonder and ask for your instructions that perhaps with regard to the annual meeting, the mayor making ceremony, we follow the principles of a virtual meeting as the Borough Council conducted this last May. And then for the town meeting, we simply advertise the opportunity for any member to take part, any elector of the town to take part if they wish, and then to register to join in on a Zoom meeting. There may indeed be very few people, so it could be quite a short meeting. The council wouldn't proactively, I'm suggesting, present anything directly to that meeting. We simply meet the legal requirement of holding the meeting through Zoom, give the public their rights to present any matters that they wish to raise on a town business, of a town affair, and then deal subsequently in other years with your imaginative ideas of enhancing the town electors meeting into a community event.
Thank you. Catherine, did you have your hand up? No. Right, Brian, Councillor Markham.
And just ask Richard, my view, my understanding of the annual meeting, the town electors meeting, was it wasn't just electors, it was community groups that we might be supporting. Beware, now it may not be able to do that at this Zoom meeting, but it's a public meeting, but should groups that the Borough Council maybe has been involved with, like just sort of one rate crisis, the community law and so on, be invited to that meeting, or maybe that's at the Zoom meeting, it wouldn't work so well. There's not the opportunity to do that way.
Exactly so, sir. That was certainly your intention originally, and we had reserved the Great Hall of the Guildhall for that purpose, to invite a wider spectrum of community activity to take part. That, as you say, it can't be achieved as a virtual meeting. Therefore, I'm suggesting that you merely follow the statutory requirements and give an elector their democratic right to come and be heard, but we don't provide any ancillary community-related activities for this year, and you defer it to next year when you can consider a much wider community event to encourage great participation.
Thank you.
If that's your agreement, Chair.
Great. Yeah.
Yes. We do need to just look at the part of the transferred civic regalia, which the council will inherit, with the blue and the red councillor robes. And the red robes, originally the aldermanic robes, have been worn by members of the cabinet and before that chairs of committees. With what procedure does this committee wish the town council to adopt for formal civic occasions? So, open to suggestions on this one. Councillor Marriott. Les?
Yeah, well, I think it's been drummed into us a little bit by Richard, when it comes to being on the town council, we are all equals, even chairs. The only other person obviously stands out would be the mayor and the deputy mayor. So my view is very clear, we've got enough blue robes, and everyone bar the mayor and probably the deputy mayor should wear blue robes. And that's where I think we ought to be leaning towards, to be honest with you.
Right here, because Brian Markham.
I agree with that entirely. Keep the blue robes, the mayor and deputy mayor to wear the appropriate robes, but everybody's equal with the blue robes.
There were lots of people who want to come in this. Jamie, Councillor Lane.
Yeah, totally agree. I think all councillors in blue robes, the mayor and deputy mayor in red robes.
Right.
Of course, the hats, because if you wear a red robe, you have a different hat with a gold bit on the side. So be careful of the hats as well.
Right. Councillor Hallam, Mike.
Yeah, just to show that we have different views on our side, I'd probably disagree, actually. I think that the red robes were based originally on the alderman, which is effectively a way of being based on length of service. So I think I'd rather, my preference would be to look at something based on length of service carried over to the new, because obviously there's no length of service of the old, and agreeing a figure, 20 years service continuous, or whatever the figure might be, that would carry on to a red. So a red would mark longevity of service. That would be my view. Okay,
that's an interesting one. It's also been suggested that the present alderman might wear red robes, but there's lots of possibilities. But I think if we agree that in general the town councillors will wear the blue, and maybe long-serving councillors, 20 years or so, can move into the red.
Jane, sorry, could I come back in? The
Yes.
idea of the alderman wearing the red, that kind of works for me as well. So
okay.
Rather than length, so not getting rid of them. So what I'm not trying to do is say get rid of them. I'm trying to say, well, let's think about how we do it. So maybe giving them back to the alderman and everybody else in blue, other than the mayor and the deputy mayor, and then the alderman wear the red. Maybe that's a suitable way forward.
That's been suggested. Yes.
Sorry, that brings me to a question.
Yes, carry on, Brian.
A question for Richard, because I was asked this today. I understand that next week. No, yes, I am about to become an honorary alderman of the Northampton Borough Council. However, my previous discussions on things like freedom of the borough and everything else with Richard, I'm not sure that being an honorary alderman of the borough council transfers in any way, shape or form to becoming an honorary alderman of the new town council. I mean, I'm not saying it should. In fact, I don't think it should, but I just would like to know with clarity where those honorary aldermen of the borough council are. They don't transfer automatically to the town at all. That's my understanding.
I think
perhaps
Richard
I could answer that question.
Yes, I was going to say, come in here, Richard, because you are negotiating on this, aren't you?
Well, the first point is the legal point. The power to appoint honorary aldermen rests with borough councils and county councils. You do not possess the power to appoint honorary aldermen. You can appoint honorary free men and free women, but you cannot appoint. That power doesn't relate to you. However, I did report previously that with regard to the honorary titles and indeed the hereditary freemen, which will pass from the Borough Council in law to West Northants, it's perfectly acceptable for the principal councils to grant to the town council an agency to conduct that particular function on its behalf. And many former borough councils who've subsequently become town councils have entered into similar agreements with their unitary council. I cited previously at a committee Shrewsbury and Salisbury town councils who have entered into agency agreements under the Local Government Act section 101, where they are granted the ability to act on behalf of the principal council, use their powers to maintain the all civic offices. And I believe Laurie will confirm that the Borough Council at the meeting on the 22nd is also being invited to grant to this council an agency which will enable it, should it wish, to grant similar status in the future. The second part of Councillor Markham's question has already been determined by you. You've already decided that irrespective of any agency arrangement for the future, that any person who holds an honorary office granted by the Borough Council prior to the 31st of March 2021 will be accorded the same precedence on civic occasions by the Town Council as they would have previously enjoyed under the Borough Council. For example, the point raised about the honorary alderman wearing the red robes on civic occasions for the organised in future by the Town Council is perfectly permissible. I'm afraid I don't know quite how many
Honorary alderman.
how many honorary aldermen there are, whether that's a practical solution, but that's something to be considered.
I'll be happy
not
to wear
going
blue.
to have any formal chair. There won't be any formal civic occasion prior to the election, so that's a point that could be considered later.
I should be happy to wear blue at any time.
Avoid the red. Right, Councillor Les, Councillor Marriott, your hands is up.
Well, it actually wasn't. It's probably been up before, but it's interesting that Mike's actually put a different proposal to what the rest of us. But I think initially, as a town council starts, you know, we probably shouldn't be actually sort of thinking about the red robes initially. I think we all ought to be holding blue. And I'll take Mike's point on board. You know, if you've got length of service, then that's probably something that people ought to consider in the future. But it depends who gets elected, doesn't it? Because you might find that nobody who's an honorary alderman gets elected either. So it all comes down to what happens after the election and probably what the new body thinks. But I think initially, and between now and when the actual new councillors are elected, just in that period alone, then I think the blue robes were appropriate, except for the mayor and the deputy mayor. You know, so I think that's something that at least it's halfway out, and probably Mike can then argue the point into the new council, really, or the councillors can. But I think initially we should be all in blue, to be honest.
Right. Okay. Oh, Laurie, did you want to?
Yes, just to explain, the report I've already mentioned that's going to full council on the 22nd of March, that's a week tonight, will also include transfers of the functions on Freeman and so on. It's a short report. I mean, the main point of the report would be to formally transfer the mayoralty to the town council, because it is an important occasion. And I've already alluded to the fact that we're agreement for protecting the muniments, but there will also be all the titles and so on that is dealt with. But it is a short report, and there are issues, as Richard has mentioned, about agency and so on, which will have to be looked at. But again, I think the Unitary Authority will be very happy to cooperate with that. We also have an issue with the honorary recorder as well, because we want to make sure that's safeguarded. So these issues will have to be dealt with. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Jamie.
Yes,
Jamie.
thank you. I just wanted to come back on this point around the robes, because I don't think there will be enough red robes for all the honorary aldermen. But I think if you look at Trevor Bailey, who was an alderman for many years, and he always used to come to civic events with his bowler hat. And maybe perhaps the honorary alderman would want to wear a bowler hat, and it'd be a nice fitting tribute to Trevor as well, I think. Thank you.
Right, okay. We're getting into the fancy dress box here, aren't we? Mike, come in here.
Thanks. I think we've kind of almost stumbled across the a sort of an answer, which is that actually what we want to see, what I'd quite like to see is the role of honorary aldermen played up in a little way, and really utilising that experience that they all bring to the table. So how we do that and what colour robes they wear probably is just a side point. So I'd kind of be happy with sort of blue initially, but looking at how we play those roles out. And is it a red robe? Is it a bowler hat? Well, it's just really, it's about civic importance. And why I mention it is because a few times you hear people in the crowd on like a Remembrance Sunday say, or people have asked me, why the different robes? Why are you in blue, Mike, or why are you in red, Mike? What's the difference? So to play up that as a level of importance, say, well, those people have served the town for many years and they're now sort of retired, or they're honorary, or whatever it might be. So partly to play up that role. So I think it's an interesting concept as to how we move that forward and what that role looks like.
Yeah, I agree. Right. Have we got anybody else wanting to speak on this, or have you all? Because I've got lots of hands up still. Les, you wanted to come back in? No?
No, the hand should have gone down. Sorry.
Yeah. May I just ask for clarification, if I may, on the specific point that Laurie mentioned of the handing over the mayoralty. does he envisage that the arrangements that are going to occur at the special council meeting on the 22nd remove the need for any other ceremony to be held on the 1st of April when Councillor Ashraf formally does become the town mayor?
No, from what I understand from the meetings that have been taking place, no, that won't be the case. But if my memory serves me rightly, I think you were talking of having your own special meeting on the 1st of April.
Well, it wasn't. I would, if I may, Chair, to debate with Mr. Gould. It's not the best way in the meeting, but I wasn't anticipating a meeting. I was anticipating a short ceremony where what would be the former borough mayor, Councillor Sargent, formally recognised Councillor Ashraf's elevation to the title of town mayor and Councillor Meredith as deputy town mayor, and just a short, with an opportunity for all the town councillors to join them, and possibly borough councillors, immediately past borough councillors as they then would be, to join them on Zoom just to record the fact, and for Councillor Ashraf to formally wear the robes and chain and perhaps have the formal photograph as he would have done had it been a mayor-making ceremony. It's going to happen anyway in law, of course, but it would be nice to recognise it.
I think that sounds an excellent idea.
But would the committee agree to that as well then, Chair?
Yes, yes, I think everyone's agreed there. Okay, so I think we've decided on the blue, and the meetings that are going to take place at the beginning of the new council. Great, thank you. Council training is item number 14 on the agenda, and this is to consider the arrangements to provide suitable training for councillors after the coming elections. So, Richard, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're proposing to put in place for the new councillors?
Thank you, Chair. This is using the offices of NCALC and others to provide training. I appreciate that currently all the members are very experienced, and many may be fortunate at the elections coming, but there will be undoubtedly some people will be coming to this new. But even for those councillors who have been long serving on the borough council, as you have been discovering, there are a number of important variations in being a town or parish councillor. Therefore, some degree of training would be, I think, welcomed by all. So the proposal is to offer for councillors a general training on, as you can see, a date. We've already suggested that to fit it in the calendar very early, that all councillors be invited to attend the general NCALC training for new town or parish councillors. This will be a dedicated session just for the Northampton Town Council, delivered by Danny and his team. And then there'll be specific training on perhaps a Saturday later on, around perhaps with the buffet lunch, more detailed, looking at the aspirations of the new councillors and how they can be, to assist them in manifesting their aspirations. And you can see, in addition to the normal myself and the NCALC team, I'm suggesting that perhaps we might have someone invited from De Montfort University, whose local government studies school is a leading centre of excellence, and just up the road we could perhaps get one of the professors to come and assist in it. And you, Chair, also suggested that it'd be a good idea perhaps to invite the leader of another nearby town council to come and talk to councillors about how they organise matters. And then there's some specific training for the various committees are being suggested. And all of these would be conducted during ordinary meetings. It wouldn't be anything additional, but for the planning committee, I have spoken to the planning department. They'll be happy to give direct training at the first meeting of the planning committee. We would provide chairing, that would be NCALC, would be providing meeting for chairs of all committees and deputy chairs of all committees. Those who would be serving on the staffing committee have a particular responsibility as employers of potentially a number of staff. So specific training on being an employer. And then finally, for those councillors who are on the finance committee, there are some very specific rules relating to financing and parish councils, which again, that committee would, I'm sure, welcome at their first meeting to have an expert, which would be provided again through NCALC. It would be an external provider, an expert on local government finance to talk them through at their first meeting. That's broadly what's proposed.
Right. Any comments there? I think they're all very sensible.
I think Councillor Russell is indicating, Chair.
Yes, Catherine.
Thank you. When I was first elected and went through the first 6 months of training to be a councillor, I was really impressed with the way the borough managed the training, and the quality and standard of training was excellent. And I hope that we'll be able to follow through on this. Training, never underestimate how important the training is. And I think the better the training is, the more we get out of our councillors.
Yes, I'd absolutely agree. I think we're all discovering how different a town council is to the borough or the county council, and obviously there will be new councillors joining us. So I think it's absolutely essential that we all learn how to work to the best of our abilities within this framework. So I think we have agreement on the training programme. Right. Thank you. Right, on to item number 15, the review of policies. Now, these have been handed out, if you like, or sort of divided out between members of the committee. And at the moment, I think Richard hasn't had any comments back. I mean, I've had a brief verbal discussion this morning about the staff handbook with Richard. But apart from that, I think everybody else has probably had a chance to look through them. And Catherine, you?
Yeah, I couldn't find criticism of the equalities policy. I couldn't. I'm assuming the HR policy, which is what it was called initially, is the same as the staff training handbook or the staff handbook.
There are specific HR policies as well as those in the handbook.
I couldn't find them on the website, Richard.
Okay.
I did look, but I couldn't find them.
Right. Does anybody else have any difficulties finding the policies that we were given to look at? No.
These have all been agreed, Chair. Previously, It was just the committee wanted to have a chance for any members of the council to have a look and to let their colleagues know. I did write to all members. I'm not surprised no one wants to make any changes. They're followed standard models. The surprise is not that members wouldn't be interested, is that I think you followed good practice in adopting policies that as recommended by the national bodies and NCALC. So going forward, I think you've got a formal set of policies which are in place now, and you can probably note that there's no need, you don't wish to recommend any changes at the council meeting.
No. So are we agreed on that? Because I looked at the staff handbook and I think it covers every eventuality we could ever dream of. So I think it's a very thorough document. Are we happy to note that we accept those policies? Thank you. Right, on to, thank you, item 16, the Brackmills branch railway line. And we need to have and consider to what degree the council may wish to support this campaign. There's a letter here from Mr. Richard Pill, who is the chairman of the English Regional Transport Association, and he's provided us with information attached, Appendix D, about its campaign to support, which is supported by Brackmill's bid to secure a reopening of the branch line between Brackmills to serve the Brackmills industrial estate. So, do we have any commenters? Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by and I should have perhaps spotted this earlier, I shall start by declaring an interest as Secretary of the Northampton Rail Users Group. And the reason I'm speaking is because that group have come into contact with Mr. Pill and ERTA on a number of occasions, and I've always been led to understand that ERTA are a very small organisation. Indeed, for many years, I came to the conclusion that Mr. Pill was ERTA, a nice grand title about the English rail, but that's how I understood the position. However, I don't doubt his enthusiasm for rail matters. And as I see, the proposal is that the planning committee would have a look at it. I've got no great objections to that, but I'm not particularly enthusiastic about the idea. And of course, as it seems to have attracted the attention of the bid at Bracknell's, perhaps it's perfectly proper for the planning committee to have a look at it and see whether they think there's anything they can take forward.
Right, thank you. Les?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Well, really appreciate Stephen giving that update on the individual, because you never know when you get these long letters. One of the comments I'd like to make is this is obviously one of the rails that they're looking at, but I do understand that as a Borough Council, we've been looking at the varsity line and trying to link up with that. So it may be an opportunity to start looking at these rail links a little bit more than just one of them. You know, actually, is there something that the Town Council ought to be looking at with that varsity line and us linking up with that? There's another one I also saw, I think it's a couple of days or so ago, a report of them looking to open up the link between Northampton and Leicester, not the harbour one, but to one I wasn't aware of, which goes up Rugby by the side of the M1 and across country that way. So there's another one they're wanting to reopen. So it might be an opportunity to actually look at, particularly when we actually start looking at the way in which we ought to be looking after the environment. Is there some other way besides broadening out just the Back Mills one, but there are the fires in the irons in the fire. So it might be worth looking a little bit broader than just that one. If they are going to look at planning, say, are there any other areas that we need to look at, particularly when it comes to rail transport?
Yeah, certainly. Yes. Brian.
Thank you, Chair. I've also been receiving correspondence from ERTA for many years, and I've been a member of planning committee for many years. That link is there. It's such a great shame that one way or another that's not been utilised with the university moving in alongside. Now, viability as a direct, whether it's a tram line, whether it as a link and through to Bracknells and eventually through to Wellington to stop all those crashes on the A45. It's just a great sadness that we can look at it all we like, but I've come to the conclusion that it's not likely to happen any time soon. You know, if it didn't happen with the expansion of Bracknells, it didn't happen with the university. I don't think it's going to happen. But the recommendation is the planning committee look at it, and I agree with that.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yes, I, in a former life, spent many years communicating with Mr. Pill, and his intensity and devotion and commitment to a single issue is commendable. However, personally, I would rather see the Town Council investigating the improvement of buses, because I think we are very badly off for transport, public transport in this town. And I think increasingly people are beginning to realise that they can't keep driving around in the cars the way that they do. And the bus systems and the bus companies here are not contributing particularly well to our town and improving the environment. So I would prefer that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. I don't think we've got any more comments on that. Can we agree to refer this to the planning committee? But I'd like also to add the provision of the bus service and maybe some sort of subsidy alongside increase and improvements to our bus services, because I think that they have to be used to be viable, but if they're not there, if they're not running when people need them, they obviously don't get the use. It's a sort of catch-22 position, isn't it? So I think bus services really do need to be looked at.
Do you mind if I come back in on this, Jane?
Yes,
because
yes.
I think Catherine's raised a point, but why don't we actually call it integrated transport for the town? You know, that includes, it's a catch-all, isn't it? So you know, at the end of the day, you know, there could be some electric sort of form of transport with cars and buggies and stuff. So just don't look at trains possibly, or buses. Is there anything else as well? So it could be looking at a complete integrated system. It's a big topic, mind you, but whether the planners want to look at that, but that might be an answer to this. Now, actually, rather than just look at one strand or another, then try to look at the old integrated part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a brilliant idea, and I think you know, it will only benefit the town. Yes,
I would support that very much.
Yes. Are we happy for that to go to the planning committee on the agenda? Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Right, on to item 17, which is the Rotary Club of Northampton Centenary Exhibition. Now, Lizzie has been heavily involved in this, and if you're happy, Lizzie, would you like to just explain a little bit about what you've been working on?
Hello. Yes, so I've been working with Jackie from the Rotary Club to help them organise an exhibition for volunteers and community groups. They're looking originally at the cricket ground. It was to bring all community groups, all charities, anyone that they've helped it within the last 100 years, because it is their centenary, to celebrate that. We're looking around about next March time. Now, I know it's one of the council's actions to engage all of our community groups and charities and bring them all together, and I thought it might be an opportunity for the council to make it a bigger affair, because they've only got a small room at the minute, but bring everybody in under the one umbrella. And on top of that, the Lord Lieutenant and the High Sheriff together do a Rose of Northamptonshire awards ceremony. Obviously, they didn't actually have a ceremony this year, and it's around about March time when they give out the awards. So what we could do is involve those guys too, to bring in some footfall, have the ceremony there, and try and get as many voluntary people in under one roof, so people can, you know, find out what's available to work with in Northampton, and obviously an opportunity for the groups to share what they do. So we were looking really to see if we could support potentially financially in terms of a bigger venue, and in terms of my working hours as well. I'm doing it on a voluntary aspect anyway, but obviously if we're bringing in, say, 50 or 60 more charities, it's a bigger task. So that was the proposal there.
Right, do we have any thoughts on this? Brian?
I just like the way Lizzie's referred to the Lord Lieutenant and the High Sheriff as those guys, but why not? But wonderful idea, and of course the Mayoralty has linked with the Rotary, probably going back all those 100 years at Christmas and so on. So it's what we should be about, isn't it, as a town council?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree. Les?
Thank you, Chair. Who can argue against it, really? Because that's what we're going to be here for, isn't it, as a town council? I think it's an excellent idea, and I'd like to thank Lizzie for getting involved in this and working it through. Really good stuff.
Good, good. Okay, and I'd really like to congratulate Lizzie on her 2 commendations for Civic Office of the Year Awards. So congratulations, Lizzie. This is for your work done during the pandemic, and you know, well done you. It's really, really well deserved, and we're very proud to have you on the staff of the town council.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll give you a virtual round of applause. So we just.
Yes. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, if we can agree that we will be supporting this event in about 12 months' time, give Lizzie time to work on it on behalf of the Rotary Club, but also on behalf of the Town Council, and that we will be discussing ways in which we can help as we move forward. Right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, appreciate it, thanks.
Right, on to item 18, the Heraldic Badge. Now, this is a bit of a mystery to me, but I understand it is of great benefit and could be used widely by a number of organisations. So over to Richard to tell us why we should pay £3,760 for a Heraldic Badge and what benefit it will bring to all the organisations that are associated with the Town Council.
I don't know if I'll answer the second question. I think that's for members to judge, Chair, but certainly the Town Council is, as you know, going through the process of, or have petitioned Her Majesty, the Queen, to transfer the formal coat of arms, the armorial bearings of Northampton, the ancient armorial bearings, to the Town Council. At a previous meeting, the question was raised, could these be used by others? And the simple answer is it cannot. It will be licensed by Her Majesty solely to the Town Council for its own purposes and for the mayoralty. But the College of Arms has advised that should the Council wish to permit to enter into agreement with others who may want to use a formal sign of the town to show their allegiance to the heritage of the town, we could apply separately for an heraldic badge, a heraldic badge. I've been corrected to say. Heraldic badge will be the centrepiece of the existing coat of arms. That is as you are demonstrating, Chair, thank you very much. That's the tower supporting the two lion supporters standing on a green hill. The green hill practically isn't, no words, no motto, no Castelia Forte or Concordia being added, but that would then be something which the Town Council could, if you wished at any time, agree to permit others to use. For example, a sporting club, the Northampton Swimming Club, I just had it off my head, could, if they wish, have it on their tracksuits. Or another organisation, we've mentioned the Rotary Club Centenary, you may grant the Rotary Club to use it. Many Rotary clubs use their town arms in their own Rotary regalia. Their own president would have the arms, and rather than the coat of arms, it would be appropriate that the heraldic badge be included. If you wanted to go down that route, there is at the very last page of the agenda papers a copy of a badge, and this is the grant of arms, and the actual badge would be this document that I'm circulating under the top corner. It's not so easy to do in reverse, run your finger around. But that would be the tower, and the two supporters would be on the Royal Charter. So that's the charter that comes with it. But then it would be, the badge could be used by others, and you could license other people to use it. I would assume you would do so to only to organisations who clearly represented the whole of the town, rather than perhaps where there were many competing organisations doing the same thing. And before I finish, there is then the question about the Borough Council have always used a modern logo, which is actually a version of the badge anyway. And to ask the question, would you wish to have a logo that we might use for the Town Council for its purposes, a modern logo? I'll indulge myself by giving a personal view on this, Chair. I generally try and not give a personal opinion, but on this particular subject, I would say that Northampton is very fortunate to have a historic coat of arms that's been granted in the reign of King James I in its current form, and has been used continually ever since. And I don't see why you would want to have some modern attempt to jazz it up, as the current, I believe, personally believe, the current Borough Council logo does. It doesn't look fit with me. If you were to have a modern logo, by all means have a modern logo, but don't try and change an ancient and proud historic coat of arms to do so. The two are quite, in my view, something completely separate. But the matter's before you. If this is something you wish to pursue, you would have to apply to the College of Arms. And then the second matter, if you wish to have a logo, then why not ask canvass opinion wider as to what that may be. Northampton.
So we've got some people with some comments here. Brian.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand after the last one. The whole idea, not really, I think should be left to the new town council. It doesn't particularly move me either way. I'm not moved by it, so I think I'd leave that to the new council, unless we can charge people for using our arms or logo.
Stephen.
You know, you remember I kind of was puzzled about this and raised the question with Richard. And my whole idea at the time was to try and avoid a disconnect between all the other parishes around us that consider themselves part of Northampton, but won't be part of what we are, or be able to use the logos and what that we do. And I thought if they were able to approach us and said, we'd like to use your badge, it would be a damn good idea, and it would maintain that connection that we're all Northampton. We're Northampton Town Council, but we're all Northampton, and that's why. But I've got no objection to us suggesting we spend the money, but we are very close to an election, and it isn't that pressing. So I'm quite happy with Councillor Markham's suggestion that we refer it to or leave it to the elected council when they come into being.
Okay, Les?
Just a question for Richard, because I think Steve's touched on it. When do we have to sort of get involved in this, Richard? Is it at the same time as we get the coat of arms?
Whenever you wish. There's no time constraint.
Yeah, no, because personally, and I know that probably people are thinking, well, leave it after election, spend the money. I've got no issue, no problem with that at all. But my view is we ought to be doing it anyway. You know, at some stage, the new council ought to be considering it. You mentioned the Rotary and other people could use it, and I think it does actually charm well with what Stephen wants to happen, is the fact that other places around the town, other areas of the parishes and the like, can actually link in with it as well. We have got sports clubs already, you know, the big ones like the cricket. I know that the Saints actually use a badge, it looks very similar. So I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have that. And I think it does promote Northampton, and especially if we've got a badge, £3,760 ultimately doesn't sound a lot of money. And I think it does promote the town extremely well. There are other things that I'd like to see going forward as well, but obviously we'd have to leave some of them till after the election to make sure that we keep Northampton on the map as a whole, rather than just as a town council.
Right. It looks as if there's sort of general agreement that it's a good idea, but the timing is probably more contentious. Has anybody got any thoughts about the timing? Catherine?
I think we should leave it for the new council when it comes into place, and work with them on that.
Mm-hmm. Right, are we agreed that in principle we are in agreement with it, but we'll leave it to the new town council to make the final decision?
I agree with that.
Yes. Is that okay, Richard?
Thank you, Chair.
Wonderful. Right. Okay. So I think that concludes the business for this evening. We do have an item that is exempt from the public, and we will go.
Well, Chair, you do need to formally resolve. You do need someone to move that, in view of the confidential nature of the business you're about to transact, that the press and public be excluded from the remainder of your business. You need to do that in public session before you go into the private session, please.
Are we able to agree to that, please?